Hey, what's up you guys, it's Spartan, and today I'll be showing you guys the top 10 best weapons of all time in Chivalry 2. So in order to find the top 10 best weapons in this game, I had to compile a huge list of every single melee weapon in this game, and compare their damage stats, their bonuses, their times to hit, their recovery speed, and how long they were. And after doing all those different stats for every single weapon in this game, I have found the top 10 best weapons of all time in Chivalry 2. So let's go ahead and jump into number 10. Alright, so coming in at number 10 as the 10th best weapon in Chivalry 2 would be the one-handed axe. So the one-handed axe has faster, stronger overheads, has faster combo times, but it has a slower wind-up time compared to other weapons. So overall this weapon comes in at having a damage output of 50 for a slash, 55 for an overhead, and 35 for a stab. So overall this weapon you want to use as much as possible for overhead fast attacks and overwhelming an opponent at short range. And for its speed, it comes in at having a slash speed of 630 milliseconds, so around about half a second to hit an opponent, and comes in at having 620 milliseconds for an overhead and 600 milliseconds for a stab. So overall this weapon is one of the fastest in this game to hit an opponent and has one of the highest damage per second out of any other weapon, making it come in at number 10th as the 10th best weapon in Chivalry 2. Alright, so coming in at number 9 would be the Messer. So the Messer has increased damage, longer release, has a faster, stronger slash, and has increased special damage. So this weapon has a damage output of 55 slash, 70 overhead, and 40 stab. And for the Messer's speed, the Messer comes in at having 800 millisecond slash speed, 850 overhead, and a 750 millisecond stab speed. So it's definitely one of the slowest on this list, but it has a good amount of damage and it has a nice light overhead attack. So overall this does have the second lowest damage per second out of all the other 10 weapons I'll be showing you guys, but because of its range and how it can hit multiple people at once, and because of how much damage it does for special damage, I rank this as number 9 as the 9th best weapon in Chivalry 2. Alright, so coming in at 8th place would be the Heavy Mace. So the Heavy Mace has faster combo times, has increased stamina negation on a block, and has a basic attack that stops on contact. So that means all light attacks for this weapon will stop on contact, but it does get that bonus of plus 50% damage to knights. So overall its damage output comes in at 40 slash, 50 overhead, and a 40 stab. Alright, so for its speed, it comes in at having 800 millisecond time to hit for a slash, 820 milliseconds for a overhead, and 780 milliseconds for a stab. And it also has a 800 millisecond recovery speed. So this weapon is very slow to recover and very slow to hit. So in general, this isn't the best weapon to use against large groups, but it can definitely catch someone off guard at how fast it can be to hit someone on the overhead and how much damage it does per hit. Coming in at 7th place would be the War Axe. So the War Axe is one of my favorite weapons in this entire game, and it's just absolutely amazing for mowing down groups of opponents. So the War Axe comes in at having faster combo times, faster, stronger overheads, and increased damage with a longer release, as well as a bonus damage of 25% damage to knights. So for the War Axe's damage, it comes in at having 50 slash damage, 60 overhead damage, and 35 stab damage. So you do not want to be stabbing with this weapon, and you want to be spamming light overhead attacks as much as possible and light slashes for this weapon. And for its speed, sadly enough, it comes in at the absolute slowest of these 10 weapons. So it has a hit speed for a slash of 850 milliseconds, 800 milliseconds for an overhead, and 780 milliseconds for a stab. So overall this weapon is extremely slow but has a good damage output and can hit a lot of people at once, and it's designed for taking out large groups of people and not for fighting in 1v1. So if you are playing on Siege, I highly recommend trying out this weapon, but if you're doing 1v1s, I would not recommend this weapon. Coming in at number 6 would be the Warhammer. So this weapon is basically the mini, better version of the Maul, and it just absolutely shreds through armored knights. So it has increased damage and a longer release, has slower wind-up speeds, and has a basic attack that stops on contact. So its damage comes in at 50 for a slash plus that bonus, 50 for an overhead, and 30 stab damage, and then its heavy variant is 70 for a slash, 70 for an overhead, and 45 for a stab. So that means on a heavy overhead attack or a heavy slash attack, you can do up to 105 damage to every single knight that gets in your path, which is just absolutely insane for clearing out entire rooms worth of people. Alright, so for the downside of this weapon, it's speed. So it has a 800 millisecond recovery speed, which is extremely slow. I mean, that is one of the slowest in this entire game, even out of two-handed weapons. So this is extremely slow and will punish you if you miss an attack, but what makes this weapon so good for its speed, surprisingly, is extremely fast to hit. So this weapon only takes 670 milliseconds to hit an opponent with a light slash, and only takes 620 milliseconds for a fast overhead attack. And its damage per second also comes in at the second highest in this entire game at 48 damage per second. So honestly, this is one of my favorite weapons to use in this game, and is really good for 1v1 situations and even against large groups of people with those heavy slash attacks that can kill easily 2 or 3 people at a time. Coming in at 5th place would be the one-handed sword. So the one-handed sword has a faster recovery speed, has increased stamina negation on a block, and has faster and stronger slashes. Which the faster and stronger slashes is a bit of a lie because it does next to no damage for a slash. So for the damage, this weapon has 40 slash damage, 50 overhead damage, and 50 stab damage. So you're going to be wanting to spam light overhead attacks and light stab attacks on your opponent to wrap around their defense and quickly eliminate targets in 1v1 situations. So one of the best aspects of this weapon is how fast it is. So this weapon ends up coming in at 600 milliseconds for a slash, 600 milliseconds for an overhead attack, and 600 milliseconds for a stab. So its time to hit an opponent and its time to recover is one of the fastest in this game besides the short sword. So overall, this weapon is really good for 1v1 situations and can easily hold its own against multiple opponents in this game. Alright, so coming in at number 4 would be the Greatsword. So the Greatsword has a slower windup, has increased damage and a longer release, and also has faster recovery speeds. And for the Greatsword's damage, it comes in at 50 slash damage, 70 overhead damage, and 50 stab, as well as 100 damage for a special. So I recommend using light overhead attacks for this weapon and using special attacks to catch someone off guard or try to break someone's weapons out of their hands. And for the Greatsword speed, it comes in at having 850 milliseconds for a time to hit for a slash, has 870 milliseconds for an overhead, and has 820 milliseconds for a stab. So this is by far the slowest on this list, and it also has an 850 millisecond recovery. So overall, it will take about 1.6 seconds to hit and recover with this weapon. So it is definitely not the fastest in the world, and is one of the slowest on this entire list. So overall, this weapon does 41 damage per second, which is right in the middle. But the reason why it's so good is because of how long it is and how much damage it does for overhead attacks. So overall, I recommend using this against large groups of people in siege matches, as well as even 1v1 situations if you can outrange the opponent. Coming in at number 3 as the third best weapon in Chivalry 2 would be the War Club. So the War Club has faster release at a cost of reduced damage, has faster wind-up speeds, and its basic attacks stop on contact. So for its damage, it comes in at having 30 slash damage, 45 overhead damage, and 35 stab damage, as well as a 65 damage for a special. So this weapon you do not want to be slashing with, and you do not want to be stabbing with. You're going to be basically spamming overhead light attacks as much as possible. But the reason why this weapon is so good is because of how long it is and how fast it is. So it comes in at having a 700 millisecond slash speed, a 700 millisecond overhead speed, and a 680 millisecond stab speed, as well as a 700 millisecond recovery speed. So overall, it is pretty slow, but when you compare it to the other weapons that have the same length of it, like the Greatsword or the Halberd, it ends up having a 200 millisecond increase in speed compared to those weapons. So overall, this is easily one of the best 1v1 weapons in this game and can easily outrange people and is faster than most of the weapons in this game. It can even be used against groups of people because of how fast it is and how long it is. So this weapon honestly is just extremely good for fighting in any kind of situation, and can easily catch someone off guard with how much damage it can do on a heavy overhead attack or even light overhead attacks. So honestly, this is one of my favorite weapons in this entire list, and I highly recommend you guys try this one out for yourself. Coming in at the second best weapon in Chivalry 2 would be the Longsword. So the Longsword comes in at having reduced damage and a faster release, has faster, stronger stabs, and has a faster recovery time. So this is a very quick weapon. So this weapon comes in at having 40 slash damage, 50 overhead damage, and 55 stab damage. So that stab damage is going to be key with how much damage this can do and how good this weapon is. So I highly recommend using light stab attacks as much as possible for this weapon. So overall, its speed comes in at having a 680 millisecond time to hit for a slash, 700 millisecond time to hit for an overhead, and 620 milliseconds for a stab. So out of all the different types of attacks you have, its stab is extremely fast. So overall, this weapon comes in at having a length of 5 feet and is the fastest two-handed weapon in this entire game. So because of its speed and its just raw amount of damage for its fast stab attacks, this easily makes it the second best weapon in this game and is extremely good for both 1v1 situations and fighting large groups of enemies. So this is easily the most balanced weapon on this entire list and is good for every single situation you come across. So if you want to specialize in one specific weapon for this entire game for both 1v1s and siege matches, this is the weapon to use. Alright, so coming in at number 1 for the most satisfying weapon to use would be the shovel. So the shovel just absolutely is insane on how much damage you can do and how fast it is for its overheads. And it's just so satisfying to bonk a knight in the head with and just completely whack someone 30 yards to the side with. But no, I'm just kidding. This isn't the best weapon in the game. But honestly, if I had to do a list of the most satisfying weapons to use in this game, I would put this at the top. So I highly recommend you guys use the shovel and just bonk everyone with it in the head. It is actually extremely good. You'd be surprised of how good this shovel is and how satisfying it is. Alright, so here it is, the weapon you guys have been waiting for. The number 1 best weapon in Chivalry 2, the Dane's Axe. So the Dane's Axe is by far the best weapon in this game. So the Dane Axe has a faster wind-up speed, has reduced damage but a faster release, and has faster recovery times, making it extremely fast of a weapon. So the damage output of the Dane Axe comes in at 50 slash damage, 60 overhead, and 40 stab, as well as 85 for a special. And I also want to add upon it, the class where you get the Dane Axe, you actually get 2 of them, and its thrown damage can be anywhere between 117 damage and 130 damage for a headshot. So this weapon does an insane amount of damage throwing it at people as well as overhead attack. And for the Dane Axe's speed, it actually comes in as the 3rd fastest weapon on this list, which is really surprising to see. So the Dane Axe ends up coming in at having a time to hit speed of 730 milliseconds for a slash, 700 milliseconds for an overhead, and 730 milliseconds for a stab. And it also has a recovery speed of 730 milliseconds. And then also its DPS comes in at 1st place. So this weapon, out of every other weapon in this game, has the highest damage per second. So overall, the Dane's Axe is one of the longest weapons in the game, has one of the highest damage outputs in this entire game, and also has one of the fastest recovery and hit speeds out of every other two-handed weapon in this game. So this by far is easily the best weapon in this entire game, and it's just insane how good it does against one person, like a 1v1 situation, or even tons of people fighting you. I mean, you could easily wipe out entire groups of 10 people with this weapon if you get surrounded. So if you guys are looking for a better weapon to use for your next playthrough of Chivalry 2, I highly recommend trying out the Dane's Axe for yourself and just seeing how overpowered it truly is. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed that top 10 best weapons in Chivalry 2 list. And if you guys have your own opinion on the top 10 best weapons in this game, make sure to comment it down below on what you thought the top 10 best weapons in your own opinion would be. Also, if you guys want to see the stats that I left out in the video, make sure to check out my Discord and my notes to see all the different notes for all the different weapons I did for this game. So if your weapon didn't make the top 10 best weapons list, make sure to go check out those notes and see their stats for yourself. And also, I highly recommend you guys check out the top 10 worst weapons list as well to see what weapons to avoid. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos similar to this one. So I hope you guys enjoyed this top 10 best weapons list, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, Spartans.